Let's create a pivotal impact. Friends in the industry. So I'm Josh Hannabury, your host here at the Truck Focus podcast. And our mission here is simple: to connect transportation industry leaders to the industry to help create a pivotal change. So today, I'm super excited to have back a mentor of mine and someone that's this super great guy, Chris Harris, founder of Safety Dawg, as well as he's the co-host of an excellent podcast, Trucking Risk and Insurance podcast. So during our conversation, Chris and I discussed what he's been up to since the first time I've had him on the podcast, but we also dive into the necessity of mentorship in our industry. So with the amount of carriers looking to hire new professional drivers to haul freight, it's crucial that at the time of hire, professional drivers receive the required mentorship and training to be successful in their position. So if this is the first time you've ever checked out the Truck Focus podcast, I really want to welcome you to our podcast community, and to our dedicated listeners, thank you so much for your continued investment of time. So I ask that you like this episode, share it out, and subscribe to the channel that you're listening to. I look forward to the impact this conversation is going to have. Let's get to it. All right, Chris, welcome back to the Truck Focus podcast. Really excited. So for our listeners, I'm sure most of you do know who Chris Harris is, Safety Dawg, and a bunch of other really good things. That's right. But Chris has been really integral in my podcast journey, as well as Avery's. He was actually a big reason why we started the podcast when I first learned of his podcast, which again, we'll get through in this conversation. But yeah, it's just great to have you back, man. And we're chatting obviously before we hit record, and just it's great to see what you're up to, the impact that you're having. And just again, I'm so grateful for the influence you've had in my journey. So welcome back.
Hey, thanks, Josh. And I kind of almost refused this interview because you didn't include Avery. So I just want you to know that he was the reason you got on my podcast show.
That is fair. He's definitely the star. And yeah, that's funny. I'm gonna tell him that. It'll make him feel good.
Well, and for our listeners and viewers, you should catch that interview, because Avery, what was he at that? Do you remember his age? That's got to be a year ago.
He would have just turned 11. Yeah, it was episode 18. Yeah.
So an 11-year-old did an awesome job being interviewed. It was a lot of fun. And I really hope Avery took something away from that one, but I had a great time.
Good. No, I appreciate that. And yeah, he'll obviously hear that when he listens to our episode, because he was excited when I said we're hopping back on. So he'll, yeah, man, that's good. So can you give us a rundown? And you can go as crazy as you want, because like I said, you're up to some really cool things, but just give us a recap of who is Chris Harris, talk about your business and podcast and all that good stuff.
Well, Chris Harris, Safety Dawg. One of the things that people say, why did you name your company Safety Dawg? And the reason basically was everybody here in Ontario where I'm based, my competitors all had solution in their name, and they're way too serious. And I thought, yeah, safety is really serious, but if we can't have fun doing safety stuff with the drivers, with the management, with the trucking companies, then we're really losing the audience and an opportunity, because I like to have fun. So that's why it was called Safety Dawg. The other question I would love to answer is, why did I start Safety Dawg? And I was one of those safety people for the damn insurance company, right? I worked about 13 or 14 years at the insurance company going out. And for those fleets out there, you know exactly who I'm talking about. They come in and they ask you all those questions, and they have a direct impact on your insurance premiums. Well, for years I did that, and I saw these safety consultants charging big bucks for terrible, absolutely abysmal service. And so I just looked at it, and not that I wanted to charge big bucks. I wanted to give value for my services, because I really saw the opportunity there. So I'm a safety consultant, and I go out to trucking companies and I help the safety managers and stuff like that do things. I train drivers, I train safety people, all that kind of stuff. So that's the consulting part of my business. And yes, I have the Trucking Risk and Insurance podcast, right? It was rebranded from the Dog on It Trucking podcast when John Farquhar joined as co-host full time. John Farquhar is from Summit Risk Solutions. So John's a competitor of mine here in Ontario, but Josh, there's competitors and then there's the good ones. And John is one of the good guys, knows what he's talking about. So sometimes when I can't service an account, I will feed it over to John. John has blessed me with referrals many times when he couldn't service an account, or honestly, when something hit more of my expertise than John's. For example, here in Ontario, your safety fitness is called CVOR here. So I own CVOR.ca. And of course, that means that I get a lot of CVOR questions. And so what I didn't know about CVOR, and I still don't know it all by any means, but I had to find stuff out. So, that's kind of a recap. My consulting business and my podcast business. And Josh and Avery were guests on the podcast, and it was awesome. That was a great interview.
Great. Yeah, and that's awesome. So before we go too far, where do people go? Is it safetydawg.ca or .com?
.com. Safety Dawg. And dog is DAWG. That's why I pronounce it funny, because Safety Dog was taken, actually.
Okay. Okay. Well, yeah, of course, the link's in the notes too.
Yeah. Well, do you know Mark Muriel from Carrier's Edge?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. So I was at a trucking convention, and Mark and I are kind of industry friends. I've never had a beer with Mark, but you go to enough of these associations, you know who some of these players are. And I mentioned to Mark, I want to start my own company. I wanted to call it Safety Dawg, DOG, but that website was already owned. And he said, no, man, call it Dawg, DAWG. It's way cooler anyway. And I don't even know if Mark remembers saying that to me, but that's how the name I came up with, DAWG, was Mark.
Oh, man. Advice in the most random places, hey? But yeah, I like it. When I first thought, because that's what I thought too, I'm like, that has way more personality than I like this. I have solutions, so I'm familiar with using that word, but I like something that's relatable and it's obviously different, and it really speaks to your personality, where you're really skilled at, this is what we need to know, but I'm not going to put you to sleep. I'm actually going to educate you and empower you. So I think that's really good.
Well, if I missed an opportunity, I should have called it Trucking Safety Dawg, because again, we've talked about SEO and different things like that. SEO is search engine optimization. Safety Dawg is not optimal for search engine optimization, but if I'd called it Trucking Safety Dawg, Google would have liked it better.
Yeah, they're always looking to. And then obviously, congratulations. I know you guys dropped episode 100 on the Trucking Risk and Insurance podcast. And yeah, I did some fist pumps in the air for you too. And I saw that. I was like, yes, that's exciting.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I've been blessed. And with John joining, that adds a lot of levity to it. I know John's been on the show. But more importantly, I've been blessed with really awesome guests, people who volunteer to give up their time to appear on the show, and for what? All we're doing really is giving to industry. All the information that we talk about is free.
Hey, Josh here. Just a quick interruption from our conversation, as I really want to encourage you to connect with Chris directly and check out his company, Safety Dawg, if you're looking for guidance on how to manage your compliance requirements. So you can do so by simply visiting safetydawg.com to learn more. I've included the link in the show notes. Let's get back to the episode.
Like the episode that just dropped, we were talking about mentorship. Well, I was talking to one of the safety guys for an insurance company because I asked him about mentorship. I had one of his customers call me up and said, I'm having a difficult time getting drivers approved. I want to hire drivers straight from truck driving school. What do I have to do? And I said, well, this is what I think you have to do, but I know your safety guy. Why don't you let me give him a call? I won't drop your name, but I'll talk to him. And so I talked to him and he said, oh my God, this is the biggest topic in trucking right at the moment is mentorship and how to do it and what. And anyways, him and I, the safety guy, we were on the same page. The customer was not.
Mm-hmm.
The customer wanted to do 2 or 3 days of training. And I'm saying, you probably got to do 4 weeks minimum. And the safety guy at the insurance company said, well, we would prefer more like 6, but maybe 12, depending on what and then getting into the documentation. And he was really good. He gave me some ideas that I hadn't thought of, such as what documentation for the dispatchers, because the dispatchers have a unique focus and opportunity to interact. What training is given to the dispatchers? What checkpoints? How often are the checkpoints happening? Who's doing the checkpoints? Where's the extra training? Where's the retraining? Where's the refresher training? Like it was an awesome conversation about mentorship, which is not what we're talking about today, but hey.
No, it's good. And again, that's why, like, you're obviously in Eastern Canada, I'm in Western Canada, and the conversations are the same. The problems people are fighting right now are the same. And I was speaking to one of our training schools here in Calgary, and he said, I can't remember the time frame, but he's like, it flipped on its head. Where before he was asking carriers, hey, I got new drivers. What do you think? Oh, no. And now it's the carriers calling the school saying, hey, do you have any more? Like, we got to figure this out. And I think it's one unique way. I know that there's a lot of people getting clever, but again, if you can't get insured, if that driver will not be approved to operate your vehicle, well, so I like hearing these type of conversations though.
What's happening, just continuing on that, here in Ontario, as you know, we've got what's called MELT, the minimum entry level training for tractor trailer drivers, not for truck drivers. Is that implemented yet in Alberta?
Yeah.
Okay. So how many hours is it?
If it's 100 for your class, what we call is our class 1A, it's 143.5, I believe is what Alberta was, or is, I guess.
That's higher than Ontario. Ontario without air brakes is 103.5.
Okay.
Air brakes, I think, and I'm not an air brake instructor, I want to say it's another 10 hours.
Yeah.
So that would be 113.5 hours. And only 44 of that, I think, if I remember the numbers, I could be wrong, but approximately 44 is behind the wheel. WTF? Like, how can you learn how to drive 80,000 pounds of speeding death?
Yes.
In 1 week. That's all 44 hours is 1 week.
Yes. Yeah, I agree.
So you got to have a mentorship program at the company.
Completely agreed.
Comes back to that. And even at 140 hours, I don't know how much of that is behind the wheel, but even if
I think it's about a third. Yeah, it's about a third.
Okay, so a third, that's not enough. You've got to have a strong, well-developed, well-documented documentation may be the key here, because Lord knows every 1,000,000 miles you have a crash. That's the average in trucking. 1,000,000 miles, you're going to have a crash. Whether it's your fault or not, that doesn't matter. You're going to be involved in a crash every 1,000,000 miles. And by the way, there's some trucking companies that have got that down to about 0.5. So it can be done. Some of the best, like ones who win the TCA Trucking Safety Award, some company out of Manitoba.
Never heard of them.
Yeah. It's an animal that runs on the plains. The last time I was talking to anybody, and I'll drop the name Bison, their accident number was like half an accident every 1,000,000 miles, where the industry average is 1,000,000. So they've really toned it down. And this was a number of years ago. I don't know what their number is today, but my point here is mentorship. If you don't do it the right way, you're going to be involved in a crash. And if it's one of the new drivers, you're going to be accused of negligent hiring or negligent entrustment, which could put you out of business if you don't have the right documentation. So anyways, that was a rant, on mentorship.
No, it is good though, because often it's, you have your license, here's your keys, you should know what you're doing. And you're like, I have a friend who's a trainer in Southern Alberta, and he's just like, I will train them in a dry van. So a day cab with a 40-foot dry van around a small city. Yes, they'll pass their test. Well done. To then, here's your super bees of lumber on a flat deck. Go down the biggest highways in Canada. Good luck. Like it, yeah, there's still a disconnect, obviously, and it can't stop at you got your CDL. Great job. It has to go to the carrier. There has to be mentorship. And I'm a big fan of Bison, and I love their mentorship program. I like that they're really willing to train,
Yeah.
but they also understand the ramifications of not training, which is how they got to where they are today with such an excellent safety record. So,
Well, and I don't want to speak for Bison, but I will mention that they also proactively haul drivers in. If you were to get a violation of any kind, they look at it and say, is there a training opportunity? And it doesn't have to be, it's long before a crash. It could be a speeding ticket. Well, you're going to be coming in and having a training session. I think that's part of how it goes. But going back to your Super B example, I mean, that just says Humboldt all over it. Very unfortunate crash. I don't believe, I forget the fellow's first name, Mr. Sadhu is his last name. I don't believe that crash was Sadhu's, exactly Sadhu's fault. I think we as an industry certainly contributed to it because he was not adequately trained, did not have adequate experience to be doing the job that he was asked of.
Yep.
You know, very unfortunate situation. I think it was 13 people lost their lives in that crash. So many people injured. And then if you think of it, how many lives were affected from that crash? I think it's in the thousands, because if you look at the first responders, for example, who had to show up and see that scene, them and their families had to be impacted. You know, everyone who was involved on that hockey team, all their families. So, you know, it just goes out and out and out. It's got to be in the thousands. The community of Humboldt, I think everybody was affected there. And I don't know about you, Josh, but it affected me, and I don't know anybody
yes.
In that crash.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think anyone that kind of has a pulse on industry was impacted, and I share your thoughts. I think there's a lot more than what even the media wanted to cover, because I think media has what they have a job to do. But yeah, no, and to the point of training too, because that's one question I wanted to ask. Obviously, you're a designated trainer. You've been doing it for a while, and I can't say we're over this whole pandemic yet, but we're starting to actually see people face to face, touch some skin, all that good stuff. So to keep it onto the training point, have you seen my question is, have you seen a difference in information being accepted from in-person or virtual? Like, is there a different type of attitude saying, oh yeah, I'm totally buying into what you're saying, Chris, versus maybe when they're behind a computer screen, their camera's turned off and they're texting the whole time? But have you noticed a difference in just the attitude now that you're training? So I saw that you did a safety meeting recently in person.
It was great to get back in front of drivers again. One, I love speaking to drivers. You know, as a community, it's my people. That's what I am. You know, here in Ontario, it's an AZ. I know out there it's a class one. You know, I've still got my license in my pocket. That's what I did. That I love being a truck driver. So I love speaking to truck drivers and talking about and sharing the experiences. It's, I believe, much more engaging when it's in person. I know you've done remote training. I find it exhausting, even though I give a lot of energy when I'm in front of people. It's different when we're on Zoom. The amount of energy that Zoom sucks out of me, because it's so easy to get distracted when you're just looking at the screen. As an instructor or as a facilitator, it takes a lot more energy to try to keep you engaged. It's tough, and I've got to do this again next week. You know, which, you know, next week, I know we were talking about it off camera. I'm doing I'll do a promo here.
Mm-hmm.
CDS, Certified Director of Safety for NATME. So if anybody's interested in getting your CDS, reach out to me. I'll let you know when the next one is, because this course we're offering it as a hybrid. So you could be here in Ontario sitting in the classroom with me, or you could be on Zoom. We're doing it on Zoom. And it's interesting that about 30% have chosen in class and the rest have chosen online. And I know I've got at least one attendee that's an hour and a half to maybe 2 hours away. So I can certainly understand them doing the Zoom. So it's interesting. There's some obstacles to overcome on a hybrid meeting that are interesting. I'll see how well I do next week. I've got, I think, some solutions. We'll see.
Yeah. No, yeah, I'm always interested in that. And again, when people have more experience, and yeah, I think there's a little bit more performance required to keep people like focused on a screen, which is very exhausting, and just different language, different jokes, because communication is so much more than lip service, obviously, as we know. So yeah, when you can throw your hands up in the air and talk about something like, why didn't you do, it doesn't have the same effect on a computer screen for the entire day. So yeah, I wanted to ask that for sure.
And next week is 4 days of instruction with an exam at the end. So
Okay. Yeah.
it's like 4 8-hour days of Zooming. But hey, it is an opportunity. And I've had people from Saskatchewan and Manitoba. I haven't had anybody from Alberta or BC yet join us. But if I knew there was going to be somebody, like we start at 8:30 Eastern time, well, that could be adjusted if somebody from Alberta wanted to join us, because that's a mite bit early, you know, to be camera ready at
Exactly.
6:30 in the morning.
I got to put my face on. Like I got to like try and grow some hair and
Well, I didn't think of it. BC, that would be 5:30. So if I knew somebody was joining us, we could certainly adjust the time. Not that it would be 9 o'clock or anything your time, but at least it doesn't have to be so abysmal.
No doubt. How, because I know you guys were at Truck World too, and
Yes.
just kind of staying on the human part of our industry. And so it's funny when you name drop every province except Ontario, we're not very good at getting together as industry. Like we don't have Truck World. To me, it would be like phenomenal in Calgary or Edmonton, obviously, because that's where I live. But yeah, we just don't have the same oomph, I'd say, as our friends in Ontario have. But how was the event?
It was great. Well, first of all, Truck World is an event that happens in Ontario every 2 years, because it goes to Montreal on the other years. And I've never been to the Montreal event. As I understand it, it's in a hotel in Montreal on the top floor. So they don't get the same amount of equipment there. I mean, at Truck World here in Mississauga or in Toronto at the International Center, I mean, we've got every trailer, every manufacturer of trucks, not every manufacturer of ELDs, of course, but all the ELD vendors were there. Anything just about you want to buy for a truck, including safety consultants, were there and had a presence. Insurance was there, of course. Recruiting, big presence there as well, recruiting. So it was great. I don't know the official numbers. My feeling was attendance was down from previous years, knowing that it was 4 years ago, because Truck World was canceled, the mid one. But 4 years ago, it was like on the Saturday, especially shoulder to shoulder. This year, it was maybe 3/4. And I blame that on, of course, our pandemic, because people, I think, were still a little hesitant to come out in public. But a lot of people was there and it was great. My hand, I mean, everybody said the same thing. It was great to see people. Oh my God, look at, and shake hands. And yes, there was hugging involved in some cases.
Yes. Yeah. And well, I think that's something that people that look into transportation from the outskirts don't realize the community that's built because even though it's a big industry, it's not that big. And the fact that you can build like lifelong friendships and business associates and former colleagues, and you just reconnect after what we just been through. Yeah, I could imagine. And I had two friends that went from Calgary to the event, and I was beyond jealous. And my LinkedIn was blowing up, and I'm like, oh, man, that would be fun. And just, yeah, I think it's a good way to learn about new technologies, learn about what's actually in industry, and not just like I try and read an article a day, and it's much more fun having those conversations for sure. But I'm happy for you.
Well, if I can give a shout out, not a shout out, what surprised me at Truck World. First of all, let me start by saying I drive a Tesla. And we won't get into why, but I drive a Tesla. It blew me away. Every manufacturer there, Mac, they all had an electric vehicle. There was one, what's it called? Lloydstown was there with their electric pickup truck, which was really cool. So their electric pickup truck, where I could really see this working well, sorry, just got a phone call, of course, where I can see it working well is in the shunt trucks. They had an electric shunt or a yard truck, depending on what you call it, what part of the world you're in, shunt trucks, yard trucks. What the salesman, and I stress the word, he was a salesman, said there is a 10-hour battery charge and it only takes 45 minutes to charge up. So I thought, oh, okay, if that's even close to being true, well then an electric shunt makes a lot of sense. And of course, maintenance is far less expensive on an electric motor, and electricity is far, oh my God. A side story. My Tesla had some body work that needed to be done. I just picked it up today from the body shop, but I was driving a gas car for 3 weeks. Holy jumping, is gas ever expensive? Never mind diesel.
Oh, that's absurd.
Diesel here, last time I looked at it was like $2.45. And now we're almost at, it was $1.95 a liter this morning for gasoline. So I got to believe diesel has got to be like $2.60 now all of a sudden here in Ontario. Just mind blowing.
Yeah. I like electrification, and I think there's areas in our industry. Well, you just mentioned it. Shunting's a big one. And that could be obviously at a retail place. That could be at a terminal. That could be at a port, because they're it's basically minimal compared to, and you're not worried about the weight, because that's always been my one question is, I'm like, okay, but you're 12,000 pounds heavier than a basic over the highway tractor. So, but yeah, I think it's exciting to see. And in Alberta, we're doing lots of projects on hydrogen. So you're doing hydrogen over electric and stuff. So yeah, it's cool to see just, again, what industry is doing and where we're going.
There's going to be a huge shift, I believe, away from fossil fuels to exactly what I think it's going to be, at least some combination of electric. As you said, maybe it's hydrogen that's, they have a compressor that charges the electric batteries or whatever it is, something like that. I do believe, because here in Ontario where I live, I'm close to Niagara Falls. So my electricity comes from Niagara Falls. Well, you can't get much greener and cleaner than water falling over a cliff to turn a turbine to send me electricity.
Yes.
Coal-fired obviously is gone pretty much, but anyways.
Yes.
That's not what we wanted to talk about.
No, it's good. I like it. And I'm grateful that we've had the chance, obviously, to catch up. And I'm grateful for your impact in my journey, in our industry, and what's to come. But I call them my staple questions now. You touched on professional drivers before and your care for them, but I always like asking, like, if I can keep it very simple, what are you most grateful for professional drivers? Because I think, and you could probably attest to this, far too often you hear the badgering of drivers, or the belittling, you're just, people that I know admire the profession. I always like to know their thing. So yeah, nice. Okay, good. Beauty. Actually, mine's a little different look.
There you go.
So I'm going to put mine on too.
I will get that in there. Whoops. This is from my friends over at NAL. But yes, It was great during the pandemic that truck drivers were recognized as the heroes that they truly are. It's unfortunate it took a pandemic to raise that awareness. However, as we leave the pandemic, I'm concerned that elite status of road heroes is quickly fading as people quickly forget what it was, the service that truck drivers provide and how heroic they really were during the pandemic and putting themselves every day at risk, especially in the beginning when we had no idea what COVID was all about. Truck drivers are out there every day doing the hero's work and delivering everything that we need. So anyways, did that answer? I forget exactly what the question was because I went to grab my Thank a Trucker hat. You know?
I love it. Yeah, it's on my wall now, but Avery drew a picture that said "Thank a Trucker," and that was his first viral moment, where it had to have been like well over 50,000. Like you can track views and stuff, and I'm like, dude, you're onto something, and that really, I think that clarified or created some clarity because we've been like. My father-in-law's been a professional driver longer than I've been alive, and that's my background. So I'm like, it's in our blood. We care about the industry. But you're right. When the pandemic first hit, it was just like, and you guys are heroes and gals. And I agree, we can't lose that. So that's why I like bringing up that question every interview, because I think it's important that we just keep that front of mind. Like they're professionals, but they're exceptional people, they're family, they're part of our community. So, but yes, you did answer the question.
Well, think of it. I mean, every day they're doing a number of miles. You know, if you're a long haul guy, you're probably pushing close to 500 or thereabouts. You've got regularly 80,000 pounds in a 50-foot trailer or 53-foot. No 50-footers that I know of. In a 53-foot trailer, you're traveling at 100K, which if you think about it, is 88 feet per second. And I know I'm talking old language. I don't know how many centimeters that is, but 88 feet per second. Like that's fast. You're covering a lot of ground. And I said earlier that you go about 1 million miles on average before you're even involved. It doesn't have to be your fault before you're involved in a crash. That is huge. I mean, these guys do a great job of keeping our roads safe. Guys and gals. Don't want the emails, and I do promote women in trucking, by the way.
Yes, no, I agree, and it's just, man, you make me laugh. I like that. So, but no, I like keeping it front of mind. So, but yeah, Chris, honestly, it was really good to have you back, and I'm just super grateful. Like I said before, countless times, just the impact and the mentorship you've had on my journey. I really like when we're not competing, obviously from business standpoints, and we're not even really competing in this social space, but we're both podcasters. So I like that we can collectively work together, obviously build each other up, but I just really do appreciate it. And I'm glad that you were able to hop back on. This was fun.
Okay, now here's a little secret that may come out. Watch for future endeavors of the Chris and Josh, or Josh and Chris show. Before we came on camera, we were talking.
Yes. Yeah, I'm excited. And I think our industry will be excited as more things become apparent. And so just as we come to a close, I want you to name drop, obviously, where people go to visit Safety Dawg, but also the Trucking Insurance and Risk podcast, where people can go.
Well, trucking. God, no, hang on here.
Did I say it backwards? Trucking Insurance and Risk?
Okay. Trucking Risk and Insurance podcast. truckingriskandinsurance.com, I hope. Safety Dawg, DAWG.com are the two websites. And if you're really, for Ontario listeners, you can check out cvor.ca. Because can you believe the government didn't own cvor.ca? That blew me away when I found that. Because here in Ontario, we call a safety fitness certificate a CVOR. And so, yeah.
I have so many stories. Oh man, I was so confused the first time I was educated on Ontario. I'm like, okay, I don't think I'm very much an expert at anything anymore. Like, that's the difference of license class and your speed limiters and everything. I'm like, yeah, not for me.
Speed limiters are coming everywhere.
So,
By the way,
yeah,
did you see recently the DOT is proposing speed limiters now finally? So
yes,
within the next 2 years is the estimated guess. What speed they haven't said yet,
they
but
could be the one of the best coffee shops in Canada and keep it at 90. I'm told that's what their rigs are locked in at is 90K. So that will be a yeah,
90.
pros and cons. I think, yeah, we can talk
I
about that another day.
well, I've heard 65 miles per hour,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
is very close to 105.
correct. Yeah,
I do
yeah,
know that they've asked Ontario for a lot of info, and
yeah,
that's
yeah.
as a safety person, I agree. By the way, here I'll get the hate mail now. I agree with speed limiters.
Yeah, yeah, there's a lot of truth to it. There's a lot of value there, obviously. So, but yeah, again, Chris, I'm just like I said, I'm super grateful, man. Honestly, I like laughing. I like being able to laugh because someone else is making me laugh. That makes me really enjoy this whole process that much more. And yeah, I'm excited just again that you're back. It was great to have John on the podcast not too long ago. And just, yeah, I'm really excited for the collective efforts that are, yeah, transpiring between us. It means a lot. And thank you so much for coming back on, man. It's great.
Hey, it was great. Thanks, Josh.
Appreciate it. Have a good rest of your day. Bye. Chris, thank you so much again for coming back on the Truck Focus podcast. I really valued all the information you shared today. It was just really good to have a good conversation as well. So honestly, today for myself, the biggest takeaway is the necessity for mentorship in our industry. So professional drivers, when they're hired, they need to be mentored and trained to the carrier's requirements, as well as the legislation requirements, but also to ensure that they understand what success in the position is. Because we all define success a little differently, which is why carriers need to take the time to mentor and train new drivers to their expectations. So I highly recommend to our listeners to connect with Chris, connect with Safety Dawg if you're looking for guidance on your compliance requirements. So to learn more, you simply visit safetydawg.com. But also, if this is the first time you've ever checked out the Truck Focus podcast, I really want to welcome you again to our podcast community, as well as to our dedicated listeners. Thank you so much for your continued investment of time. Make sure that you like this episode, but share it out. Again, as Chris shared a ton of value today, and I ask that you subscribe to the channel that you're listening to, so that way when new content's released, you're notified right away. As always, let's create a pivotal impact.